Hello guys, welcome to Codecrafters. In this video, we are going to actually learn about exception concepts in Java. So, what is an exception? Exception is something really a common topic, right? Like let's say exception is like an event that disrupts the normal flow of a program. Your program is running quite fine, and when something actually breaks the flow of the program, that's an exception. So, what's exception handling now? So exception handling is a mechanism to handle those errors that's happening in the program. So there are many exception handling like Java, class not found exception, IO exception, SQL exception, remote exception, so many things. Okay. So in Java, this exception is from the class named java.lang.throwable. So this is the class or root class of Java exception. Okay. And this class will have two subclasses. They are exception and error. Exception and error. So these are the two subclasses of the main root class java.lang.throwable. So inside the subclasses we have different kind of exceptions. Like in exception category we have the IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception, runtime exception. The error category we have the stack overflow error or virtual machine error, out of memory error, so those things. And even inside that there are few categories. So in Java there are two types of exceptions. Two types of exception. They are checked and unchecked exception. One is checked and the other one is unchecked. Okay. Okay, checked exception is something like which the classes which are inherited directly from the this throwable class. Okay, except this runtime exception and error. So other than that, all the other classes which are directly inherited from the throwable class are known as checked exception. This unchecked is the one which is directly inherited from the runtime exception. As I already said, when the hierarchy of exception, you have two things, exception and error. Inside the exception, there are exceptions like IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception, and also runtime exception. So except runtime exception, all other exceptions are inherited from this throwable class, whereas the exceptions which are inherited from the runtime exception thing is known as the unchecked exceptions. They are this arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format. I'll just show a pic of hierarchy to make it clear. So as you can see in this slide, we have the hierarchy of Java exception classes, and our root class is java.lang.throwable, and that throwable has two subclasses, that is exception and error. So inside the exception, we have classes like IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception, and runtime exception. So the first three type of exception comes in the checked category, and this comes in the unchecked category because this is directly inherited from the throwable class, but arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, and number format are inherited from the runtime exception class. So that's why it comes in the unchecked category. And we also have the error subclass. Inside error subclass, we have three types of exception known as stack overflow, virtual machine error, and out of memory error. Yeah, inside this index out of bounds exception, we have two types. One is array index out of bounds and string index out of bounds exception. So I hope the hierarchy of exception class is clear. There are some few keywords which you need to know regarding exceptions. So in Java, there are 5 keywords are try, catch, and sorry, I'll just put this in comments because otherwise this program will generate. Try, catch, and finally throw and throws. So these are the 5 keywords which you need to learn in Java regarding exception. So what is a try? There will be a block called try, and in this block will be the one you will write the exception code. Okay, so you can't use the try block alone. So you have this block of try, and inside this try you will write the code for exception, and this try block is followed by this catch block. This catch block will handle Yeah, this catch block will handle the exception written in the try. So it's like catch block is used to handle the exception and try block is where the exception code is written. So you need to use, if you're using try, you need to use catch. If you're using catch, you need to use try. It's always preceded and succeeded by one another. So you can't use it separately. And after the catch block, there is another block which is known as the finally. So finally is something like, even if your exception is handled or not, the finally block will run. It's like something which is mandatory to run. Okay. So execute the necessary code of the program, the finally block is used. And next, there is also other thing called throw. In Java, throw means it's this keyword is used to throw the exception of the program. Okay. But there is also one more thing known as throws. Throws and throws are different. Throw is to throw the exception and throws is for declaring the exception. Like let's say when you're writing the program, you are declaring the exception. Okay, in this particular kind of code or in this particular part of code, there might be an exception and I'm declaring it in advance. So that's called throws. Okay. Now let's write a code. So let's create a program with actually like intentionally with an error. So let's create this main method. Yeah, so inside this, we are going to actually write a program. We are not going to write an exception code or anything. We are just going to see how the exception is formed in the program and the error is generated. Yeah, you all know you can't divide a number by like 0. If you're dividing a number by 0, that will throw an exception, right? So let's create a number variable named in data and let's have 100 as the answer to it and try to divide it by 0. And then let's print the code. System.out.println code. Just you can print anything. I just need to show what kind of an error this causes. Yeah, you got this error named exception in thread main java.lang.arithmetic exception by 0 at except.java. So if you're not handling the exception, if you're not handling the errors, the Java program will throw an exception like this. This is actually breaking the flow of the program, right? Because we didn't get the print statement named code. So now let's also write the same code by using this try catch block by handling the exception. So instead of this, we will just use a block named try, and inside try we are again declaring the data 100 divided by 0, and then we are using this catch block. Inside the catch block we are mentioning the exception name, that is arithmetic exception, and we are creating an object for the exception. And then we'll print the error system.out.println e. Now you can also print the rest of the code. System.out.println code. Now let's try to run the program. Yeah, you actually got an exception, that's java.lang.arithmetic exception by 0. So you know what's the exception, and also the code is perfectly executed and you got the last output of the print statement named code. This is why we use exceptions. The exception is used to handle the errors in the program and not to break the flow of the program. Not only this, instead of using this arithmetic exception, you can also use this normal class named exception. Okay, let's try to run the program now. Yeah, again you'll get the same thing. So even if you don't mention this exact exception name in the catch block, you will also get the same output. In case you don't want to print this exception and you want to print a message, you can just say can't be divided by 0. So for someone who doesn't understand the exceptions and everything, this message will make them clear that what's the error in the program. Yeah, so exception won't be written here. You'll be given a message name can't be divided by 0 and the rest of the code. Now you know what the exception is, and now let's also try in the catch block to resolve the exception. We know what's the exception. We need a solution for the exception, right? So let's create a variable like this. Int data is equal to 100 and int div is equal to 0, and let's also create a variable named interest. We'll put this try block inside it. So try. And inside the try block, we are going to divide it. So res is equal to data by div. You know it is going to throw an exception. But in the catch block, we are going to resolve the exception. So we are just going to say data divided by div plus 2. So what happens here? The 0 will be converted into 2 and then it will be dividing. So we'll get the answer 50 because our data is 100. Yeah, you got 50 and code. So this is how you resolve an exception in the catch block. Okay. Let's look at another program also, which actually like we learned arithmetic exception, and we also learned in the before lectures of array what's array index out of bounds exception, right? So we'll do that in this exception concept. So we have the same thing named wait a minute. Yeah, so inside the try block, we are just going to say, write before code int data is equal to 100 by 0. Okay. Now we are going to handle this exception using array index out of bounds. Though array index out of bounds is used for array concepts, but let's try to use the same thing. What's happening? Let's see. So yeah, even if you use a different exception, but still the output you're getting is java.lang.arithmetic exception by 0. Okay, I hope this basic concepts of exception is clear. We'll meet in the next lecture to know about multiple exceptions and how to handle all those try catch blocks and everything. Until then, thank you.